Yeah. So yeah, there's honestly so much I want to talk with you about, but from my early age, since the first time I heard your voice, I've always been very curious to know about your personality and what you are as a person, because with musicians, obviously, all the fans and all the people that listen to your music get to know you through lyrics and through your songs, and sometimes they just perceive you as a performer and is this person that is just performing what they're listening to. But I've always been very curious to understand the person behind all of this, the person that is creating all of the things that we emotionally connect with.
Right.
Yeah, how would you describe yourself as a person? How would you categorize yourself?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
Um, I would say I try every day to be loving, kind, um, sweet, attentive, um, just just a loving guy. I some people say I'm a big teddy bear, and um, I have a big heart, and um, I love my family, love my wife and my children, and um, I'm I'm a proud, husband and father, and um, my kids are everything to me. Uh, and music, music is my first love, and it's not a choice. It's just something that is, like I call it the radio in my head is always on. And I, even since I left Saliva 10 years ago, I've been cataloging songs and song titles and ideas and lyrics and verses and choruses and hooks and stuff like that. But I would just say that I'm a very warm, gentle, loving, kind person. I mean, I have flaws like everybody, I like I said, I'm a big teddy bear, but I'm also really protective of the people I love. So I can be kind of ferocious, and I don't like that side of me, but it's a side of me nonetheless. I just try to look at everything through the eyes of love. You know what I mean? I try to put myself in another person's shoes. I try to. Uh, I'm sort of an empath. Like I can feel people's emotions. Like I automatically, um, once I meet you for 2 or 3 minutes, it's like there's a chain that goes from my heart to your heart, and I can totally feel you and believe or not believe, as it were, depending on the person,
Yeah.
what you're saying. Like I can tell from meeting you that you are absolutely a very emotional, feeling lover of music and sounds and lyrics, and I can just see that. It kind of illuminates your whole face and your being. I just try to look at everything through the eyes of love, man. You know what I mean? I think that we live in a world that can be very dark and scary, and I just try to be a part of the love of this world.
That's honestly such a great depiction, in general and of my character as well, I would say too. And I definitely got the same impression of you in terms of that. I've been following your social media and I've been following, what you're doing in your life from that perspective. And it seems that, you have such a big and beautiful family, and it seems that you're enjoying yourself so much. And it's such a wholesome atmosphere that I'm experiencing through what you are uploading and what you are presenting. And when I saw that you're back in the studio and you're working on some songs and doing some shows, and you literally could feel that you are so passionate about that in such a natural and genuine way that it's just beautiful to witness that. It's that's an amazing thing, of course.
Thank you.
And you said something very interesting that I'd be interested to double down on, and I think this is something that many people that are connected with music can relate to. And, and I'm referring to the moment you said that your life is just music as well, And I'm curious to ask you, when was the time in your life where you realized that, hey, this is what I am, this is what I want to do, this is what I'm good at, this is what I want to pursue in life,
I can tell you the exact moment.
Amazing.
My aunt was about 14 years old, and she took me to take pictures one day at my grandmother's house. I think I was 4 or 5. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And in the pictures, I'm a little bitty guy, so I've got to be like 4 years old, I think.
Yeah.
And it's 1976. I went to my grandmother's backyard. She had this beautiful garden, and my aunt was set me up on the picnic table, and she put her arm around me, and we were taking pictures together. Well, there was a little transistor radio hanging from my grandmother's little garage.
Yeah.
And I wasn't in my house. My dad was a preacher at the time, and we never heard any. I don't remember hearing music that much from a radio or some source like that. So I'd never been around a radio playing secular music.
Yeah.
And I remember the moment that radio came on, I heard Eric Clapton singing, "I shot the sheriff, but I didn't shoot the deputy." Dun, 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 dun. And I was like, what is that? And I just remember my whole body was like flooded with this feeling like I'd never felt before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it felt like, I don't know, it felt like another spirit entered my body or something and just like illuminated everything, my hands and my legs and my brain and my heart. And from that moment, I started to, like I said, my dad was a preacher, and he was also a singer, and he would get up and do 4 or 5 songs, and then he would preach, and then he would do 4 or 5 songs. And he had a little band with my sister, who was about 12 at the time. And my sister would sing harmony with my dad, and I love harmony. Like, I discovered what harmony was, and I was like, oh my God, I love this. But I used to beat my mother would let me drag all the pots and pans out in the kitchen, and I would take wooden spoons and sit there and just beat on the pots and pans. I didn't know what I was doing. I just loved the sound of loud beating on pots and pans,
Yeah.
And I figured out that I was trying to play drums.
Yeah.
And my dad, I remember my dad took me to a couple of drum lessons. And I remember this cat from the 70s was trying to teach me how to play a beat and everything. And I wanted to do like drum rolls, and I wanted to like jam out on the kit or whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember after about the second drum lesson, the music teacher took me out like this and handed me to my dad, and he goes, "I can't teach this boy nothing. He's gonna do whatever he wants to do. I can't teach him nothing." And then I started to play drums with my dad, and that was when I was 5 years old. I started to play drums, and just was absolutely infatuated with beats and the drum kit, and how the toms interact with the snare, and how the snare interacts with the hi-hat and the bass, and the cymbals and ride cymbals and crash cymbals and all the different aspects of drums. And I was a drummer for years and years, and I didn't discover that I could sing until I think I was 8 or 9 years old, when I finally figured out I could sing. And that was from listening to the radio, and I heard that Journey song, "Love and Touch and Squeezing."
Yeah.
And at the end of the song, when it goes na 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 na, and then at the end when all the music drops out and it goes na 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 na, I was like, "What is that?" So I started to take a little tape recorder that I had. My parents had got me a tape recorder, I think, for my birthday, from like Kmart or Walmart or whatever. And you put a cassette in it, and you push record, and you could record your voice.
Yeah.
So I would set the radio across the room and play Journey songs or whatever was on the pop radio, and I would sing over on the other side of the room. I would sing into the tape recorder. So I would kind of have the music in the background and my voice on the tape.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I was kind of making a 70s karaoke machine.
Yeah.
Early 80s karaoke machine. But my parents busted in my room, and they were like, "You can sing." And I was like, I thought I'd been busted for something. I was like, "Okay, what does that mean?" And so they started to put me in singing lessons and music lessons. And my dad was, like I said, did gospel music, but he also did country music. So a lot of the music that I was introduced to as a child was like Merle Haggard and George Jones and Johnny Cash and stuff like this. And I loved getting to sing with my dad and getting to have that bond, with him. But I didn't, country music was not necessarily my thing or whatever. But and I began to hate going to lessons and all this stuff, because I didn't want to learn how to read music and write music notes and stuff. I wanted to just sing and play drums and write songs and do that. So music teachers were constantly frustrated with me. But man, I've always it's my first love. You know what I mean? It felt just like, and it's lasted to this day. Anytime that I make music or write music or I'm in the studio with music, and even listening to other people's music that really touches me. I'm just all about it, man. I still get butterflies when I hear it in my stomach. I still have that feeling wash over me, you know, when I really love something. It's just been like a 45-year love affair with me.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all of these. You know,
sorry for my long answers.
No, they're absolutely perfect because you know it's very immersive and it's very interesting to hear all of that because it exactly portrays you know your whole journey into who you are today, essentially. I guess.
Absolutely.
You know, you kind of touched on a very big question. I want to discuss with you because you know when I heard your voice and when I heard Survivor for the first time, you know, this was in a period where the alternative world was very much immersed in the new metal scene and all the bands in this area, and more or less like 80% of them, all sounded the same. And while, when I heard you, you were sort of, perceived as part of this scene, there was so much more to your music. You know, that your voice was so soulful, and obviously the rap was there, but there was so much soul, there was so much southern influences, and there was such a big palette of influences. And I'm curious to hear what was how such a accumulation of sounds generated for you as an artist in order to produce such a result. And you kind of touched on that, but I'll be interested to hear more about it.
All right. First of all, you are such a great interview, and your questions are so thoughtful and amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wow, this is Shivas. Thank you so much. This means so much.
I think it's because of the way I was raised. Being in the church for the first 8 years of my life, like I said, my dad was a preacher, so all I was exposed to was gospel music.
Yeah.
And then after my parents left the church, from 8 years old until about 16 years old, I was exposed to, I still didn't have albums and I still wasn't allowed to collect music, but all I had was the radio. All I had was American Top 40 and, I used to listen to Casey Kasem's American Top 40. And so pop radio was what I was exposed to. So my influences, when I was a kid, if you would have asked me what my influences were, I would have tried to appear to be hard edged and be like, my favorite bands are AC/DC and Kiss and Motley Crue and bands like that. And that's true. I do love those bands, but as an adult now, I've learned to really go back and think it through and really pull out what my absolute influences were. And honestly, as a young man listening to the radio, my biggest influences were almost 100% African American female singers. I loved Whitney Houston. I loved Anita Baker. I love Sade. I love Aretha Franklin, you know. And then growing up in Memphis, I was exposed to a lot of blues and a lot of the music on Beale Street, like Blind Mississippi Morris and Howlin' Wolf and James Brown. And James Brown is a big influence. And, you know, things of that nature. And then also I was just as influenced by stuff like The Police and Duran Duran and Culture Club and the Thompson Twins and Tears for Fears. Tears for Fears.
Yeah.
Love Tears for Fears. And, you know, so I was just as influenced by one as I was by the other. But I think what always made me comfortable with every style of music was hearing every style of music. Because I think at the time I thought, well, I'm not allowed to have Kiss records or AC/DC records or Motley Crue records. But it was kind of a blessing in disguise because I got to hear that stuff on the radio, but at the same time I was inundated with all these different kinds of pop music. And I would not trade that for anything. I think that is totally what, you know, made me who I am and developed my style and everything. Ozzy Osbourne is another big, huge influence on me. The way he shapes his vowels and like he's the only person I know that can put 7 syllables in the word home when he says, "Mama, I'm coming home." And the way he shapes his I was talking to a vocal teacher about this, the way he shapes his vowels and sings the A-E-I-O-U sound. It's just amazing.
Yeah. I mean, that's you know, so interesting to hear because, as I've said, I would say that your music was my gateway to modern alternative music. You know, because I was raised in a family where obviously, you know, classic hard rock and all of the names that you've mentioned were on a big pedestal, and you know. I guess it's a very typical story, but there was this time I'm watching, you know, WWE, and you know, your song comes up, and I'm like, wow, you know, this is, you know, so new and so powerful, but at the same time, it is just modernized rock and roll in its best shape and form. You know, it's just I could relate from what I knew to something completely different. So in I guess, you know, this was very unique because as I mentioned, all of the other bands were just all the same, you know, just trying to hop on a trend. And, you know, what you were doing was so different in my eyes. So yeah, that's
thank you.
Of course. And another thing an aspect of your talent that I'd be glad to discuss is that, at least from my own perception, at least from how I, you know, felt and connected with your music, there was always a significant difference in the way you deliver, portray, and express your emotions. You know, even through the lyrics, the things you sang, the things you mentioned, you know, the words all hit me in a entirely different way than a regular, you know, this is a lyric to a song, so it just goes with, you know, with the track. But when you were singing your lyrics, it really hit me. I really could understand them, and even from always and greater than, less than, and how could you, and all of these things, just I could just I guess experience what you've been singing about. And I'm curious to hear whether this is some natural, genuine talent of yours to sort of encapsulate your emotions and portray them into words, or this is more of a quality that you've maybe developed through the years.
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. Mm-hmm. I think I asked Eminem one time. Wow. I was at the MTV Video Music Awards, and I had my son Cody with me, and I was taking him around, introducing him to different people, and I introduced him to Eminem, and I asked him, I said, how did you get? I said, what is your advice on writing lyrics? I said, how did you get so good at writing lyrics? And like you said, portraying your emotions right then and there. Yeah. And he said, by writing lyrics. He said, I constantly write lyrics. He said, I have stacks of notebooks at home that nobody will ever hear, that are he said that was just me sharpening my sword. It's like a blacksmith when they sharpen an axe or when they sharpen a sword, they spend time with that sword and they sharpen it until it can slice through paper. And that's the same with lyrics. Is I think when you continually write lyrics, you just get better and better and better and better. And your lyrical sword gets sharper and sharper and sharper. And like they say, the power of the tongue is a lethal weapon. Yeah. You know what I mean? It can bring love, it can bring joy, and it can also bring death and destruction. With the words we choose to speak, life is either given or taken away. And I think with my words, I've always tried to give life and give love and give honor and respect. I definitely went down some dark, some dark alleys with some of my lyrics when I was going through some bad times in my life. But I have always had the ability to, and I think this is a God-given talent, is I've always had the ability to portray my emotions that I'm feeling at that moment. Like you said, the song How Could You I wrote it about my guitar player was going through a divorce with his wife, and just the things that happened, and seeing my brother hurt, and seeing him so heartbroken, and seeing how it, just destroyed his heart, and just smashed it into a million pieces. That hit my heart, and that's what I wrote How Could You about. I was just like, how could this person do these things to somebody that they said they loved and they were with for so long? And people do things when they're hurt, and and then you throw drugs and alcohol in the mix and things get really crazy. But I've always had that gift, I call it, to portray exactly what's going on in my life at that time. And I've been lucky and blessed enough that people latch on to that. Like Always, you mentioned Always.
Yeah.
I wrote that about this. I was dating this girl before I met my wife, and her sister was dating a guy that ended up beating her up. And so I was just, and I was close with this girl's sister, and I, ended up calling the guy up, and I was like, dude, you better not ever put your hands on her again. And after that phone call, and just seeing how hurt she was physically and mentally and spiritually and all these things, that's when I wrote Always. I just totally felt, I like I said, I can't help but have a chain going from my heart to your heart. And I just, in 5 minutes, I wrote, I hear a voice say, don't be so blind. You know what I mean? And it just came out in like 5 minutes. All the good ones are like 5 minutes.
Wow, this is so fascinating to hear, honestly. Me and my girlfriend's absolutely favorite song is Always. This is what we always blast everywhere. It's just such a, such a surreal moment just to hear you explaining that. Can I ask you about the influence behind another song? Because it's one that is, very close to me. And I've mentioned it as well, Greater Than, Less Than.
I love that song.
There was always such an ambience behind this track in a very specific way about me. And it's always been fascinating to me, so I'm so interested to hear what you would say about that.
Well, that was a really interesting time, and pretty much the song that started it all with Saliva, because I was in a band before Saliva called Blackbone, and we toured throughout the early 90s all the way up to about 1995, I think, or early 96. And that band sort of just blew up in our face, and we weren't getting along, and there were some fights, and I was real depressed. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I knew I was going to have to start over again. And I was riding home, and I came up with the band name Saliva. I was like a huge Nirvana fan. And I was like, I got to come up with a band name that's like a household word, like Nirvana. And I was just sitting thinking, and I was like, what about Saliva? Saliva, Nirvana, Saliva. I thought it was a good 3-syllable word. It was already a household word, and it was kind of weird and kooky. I thought people would be, kind of freaked out by that name. And so I got home, and the band broke up. And like I said, I was going through just a horrible depression. I locked myself in my bedroom at my mother's house, was still living with my mom. I think I was 24 and 24, 25. And I just locked myself in my bedroom and picked up the guitar. And the first song that came out was Greater Than, Less Than.
Wow.
And I just felt that there was this greatness that was ahead of me that I couldn't touch. And there was like a thin veil in front of me that didn't allow me to touch it, but I knew it was there. And that's just exactly how I felt about my life. I felt like I was greater than in some aspects because I had this gift of talent and the gift of enjoying the stage and loving performing for the fans and the ability to write lyrics and portray how I felt. And when, and then I wrote the less than part about feeling not good enough, feeling like I would never make it to the precipice that I wanted to go to, and feeling like giving up, and feeling like I just fall off the horse every time. But after I wrote that song, I was like, I can do this. I can do this. And it made me pick myself up off the ground and dust myself off and focus my energy on climbing out of the hole that I was in, of having to start over with a new band, and having to, just reset my whole life. And I found that there is a dignity and a freedom in starting over. There is something that, I don't know, it's like it refreshes and renews us.
It's very rejuvenating. Yeah, it's like
absolutely. And that's exactly what I felt, was rejuvenated, and there was just such a freedom I felt in starting over at song number 1. And song number 1 was Greater Than, Less Than.
Wow. That's amazing. It's very interesting because all of the answers you give are just leading to the questions I have in mind, in a very interesting way. Because
that's awesome.
My next question was pretty much, when did you feel the moment that you made it? Because you've been a part of such a, big group, and you achieved such massive accomplishments, and, you have such a big mark on this industry. Like, when was the moment when you felt, wow, like, I'm actually achieving what I want to achieve. I'm actually doing this, and my dreams are actually coming to life.
Well, that's also a moment that I can absolutely pinpoint for you. It was, they have a festival every year in Memphis called Memphis in May. And like hundreds of bands play, and they have a huge stage. They call it the Budweiser stage. It's a really big stage. And then they have a couple of other stages that other artists play on while they're changing sets on the big stage. And we had released our first album, and we had released Your Disease and Click Click Boom, and they were doing really well, and we were selling records, and everything was going really great. And they Memphis in May invited us to play as one of the headliners on the Budweiser stage. And I told the guys, I was like, oh my gosh, man, we're going to get to play in our hometown on the big stage in front of everybody, man. So we got to that concert, and of course my whole family's there, my mom and my aunts and uncles and stuff. Well, my mother was good friends with Jerry Schilling, who is one of Elvis's bodyguards and one of Elvis's best friends. So, and I was fascinated with Elvis my whole life, because, he's the king of rock and roll.
He's Elvis. Yeah.
He's Elvis, right. And I got to sit and talk with Jerry Schilling and pick his brain about Elvis, and he was just so nice and so kind. And then I was getting ready to go on stage, got my outfit on. I was wearing this white suit. I was wearing a suit and tie that night because anytime it was a special occasion, I always liked to dress up. My dad always liked to dress up, and all my favorite singers like Lane Staley back in the 90s, he used to come out on stage in a like a lime green suit and tie, and I just thought that was so killer and looked so elegant and fascinating and pimp.
I remember, seeing the video for Ladies and Gentlemen where you're in such an attire, and I felt it, it was so cool as well. So yeah, sorry for interrupting.
Yeah.
Just,
no, I love it. I love it. And so I was getting my suit on and fixing my tie and everything. And we were getting ready to walk out of the dressing room. And Jerry Schilling said, "Do you mind if I walk you on stage tonight?" And I said, "Of course not. I would love that, And just standing beside the stage and hearing like 60,000 people like screaming, and just the energy rising in those 60,000 people, because they knew what was about to happen. We knew what was about to happen. And then our intro starts playing and the lights go down and it's just mayhem. Everybody's screaming. And I felt Jerry Schilling slip his arm inside my arm like that. And so I like said a little prayer like I always do before I go on stage. And he walked me up to the edge of the stage and let me go. And later on that night, had an amazing show, killed it in front of 60,000 people in our hometown in Memphis. The crowd was just bananas, dude. It was nuts. And later on that night, we were at a bar, and everybody's drinking and having a good time at the bar. And Jerry Schilling is sitting over on the corner of the bar. And he looked at me and he said, "Come here." So I come over to him and I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You see this ring?" He had this little pinky ring on. He said, "This is a tiger's eye ring." He said, "E gave this to me." He said, "EP gave me this ring." And he said, "I just want you to know that when I walked you on stage tonight, I haven't had that feeling in a long time, but I felt it when I walked you on stage." He said, I haven't felt that feeling since I walked Elvis on stage, but I felt it when I walked you on stage." And that is the moment. That was the top of the world to me. That one of Elvis's guys had walked me on stage, and I had given him that same feeling that Elvis gave him. I was like, wow, that was the one for me.
Wow, that's wow. Just for our guys, that's such an amazing, answer to this question, because usually most of I've been fortunate enough to be in touch and be friends and to communicate with so many names in the music business, and most of the times as a highlight, these people always outline big sales or playing at this venue or getting a compliment from this name, but this one is absolutely special. And talking in this vein, what what would you say is the achievement or the accomplishment, or the moment that you are most proud of with your career?
Wow. These are such good questions, man.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you.
I mean, there's so many moments, that have been so incredible. But I think I'm probably I'm most proud that the fans come up to me and say, your music helped me through a hard time in my life. Knowing that I was instrumental in helping someone get through a hard time in their life or a hard time in their childhood, it is, I couldn't be more proud of that fact. I had a girl come up to me one time at a meet and greet, and she said, I want to thank you for writing the song Always, because it kept me from putting a shotgun in my mouth.
Wow.
And, you know, women coming up to me and saying that Always gave them the strength they needed to leave an abusive relationship with a man. Moments like that, I'm just couldn't be more proud of moments like that. Knowing that my words and music and this gift that I've been given has reached out and touched someone that I've never even met before. I couldn't be more proud of that. That's everything to me. And that's why I continue to do music. Is, yes, it's nice to make a living, and it's nice to be able to take care of my family, because my family is the most important thing to me. But to know that your music is medicine to some people is everything to me. And that's why I want to go forward. That's what makes me get up and get out of bed in the morning, is knowing that somewhere there's a little 12-year-old girl in her bedroom that, is fighting with her parents, that hates her life, that is thinking, about possibly doing something crazy. And she finds this music, whether it's my music or anybody else's music, the power of music for them to be able to latch on to that. And when everything is falling apart, they can hold on to that music and get through that moment or that time in their life. That's everything to me, man.
That's beautiful, and I think it shows so much about your character and who you are as a person. Because from my personal experience, obviously many people start doing music because this is their calling. This is their talent. This is their natural urge. Right. But it feels like many of them, once they achieve some sort of commercial success, or once they realize what sort of benefits they can get through what they do, they sort of forget about that. Forget about the significance and the importance and the impact that you can create on the people that need it. And it's so it's so uplifting to see that you've achieved so much and you've been through a lot, and you still keep that on top of your head. I think that's very impressive and very important as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course.
I think you have to keep that in the forefront of your mind, or you tend, like you said, this business is custom made to eat your soul.
Oh, yeah.
It will, if you let it will eat your soul. And I'm living proof of that. But I think having the strength to walk away from Saliva when I did, and having the strength to come back has put me in the frame of mind where I've realized what is most important to me. And like I said, it's nice to be able to take care of my family, but it's not, at the end of the day, it's not about that. If I was homeless, I would sit on the corner and throw a hat down and play songs for people to come by and throw money in my hat. You know what I mean? It's the love and the obsession with music that drives me.
That's amazing. That's fantastic to hear. So throughout your experience, with all of this, what would you say, are the most important lessons you've learned? Like, what would you say is, the things that pops up in your head that are a result of everything that you've been through with your career?
Well, I've learned that there's nothing more important in this life than time. When I was young and, was first becoming successful, I thought, well, if I get this house, I'm going to be happy. Or if I win this award, I'll finally be happy. Or if I get this car, I'll finally be happy. Or if I get this girl, I'll finally be happy. And I talked to Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue one time, and he said, there's a hole inside you that you will never fill with money or houses or cars or girls or any of that stuff. And that completely rang true with me, because I tried to fill that empty hole inside of me with money and cars and houses and girls, and because I had never had such access to those things. I grew up really poor, and you know, I I wish there. I told somebody the other day, I wish there was a class that you have to take when you first get a record deal or when you first make it, to prepare people for what's about to come their way, like how to use money and manage money, and how to stay away from pitfalls like drugs and alcohol and things like that. And but there's not a class like that. You work your whole life to get to this certain point, and then you get there, and it's like chasing a rabbit your whole life. What do you do once you catch the rabbit and you're holding the rabbit,
What's next? Yeah.
and what's next? And I think that's, of course, anybody that is a professional musician will tell you, when you get your record deal, or when you make it, that's when the real work begins. That's when the real work starts. And I spent years playing clubs to nobody but the bartenders, and um, making zero money, and just getting paid in a beer tab at the end of the night, sleeping on a pool table. And in Nashville, they call that getting smoke on your clothes. How many that's what they call paying dues now. Yeah. Is you got any smoke on your clothes, boy? and that just means how many empty bars have you played? How many times have you went out on the road and played to nobody but the employees of the venue? And but I think if I had to give advice to anybody that was starting out in this business, I think what I've learned is to stay away from those pitfalls, to be smart with your money and be smart with your time and stay away from drugs, stay away from alcohol, stay away from all those pitfalls that because it's going to be offered to you by everybody and it's going to be for free, you know, and that would be my best piece of advice. And what I've learned is to stay humble and to stay focused and to always see things through the eyes of love.
That's beautiful. And it's so interesting because everything that you've mentioned, you said a few things that are very relevant to my personal situation right now, considering that, because, to be fair, I'm just in a situation where, I'm considering investing into a house, and obviously it's a very difficult process, and it's a very draining experience in general. And I'm just such a person that is very ambitious and concentrated on achieving the things I want. And at some point, I just found myself in, this self-assessment where I started questioning whether this is really what I need or this is really what I want. And, what's the difference between those things? And, your words really hit home right now. So thank you for that. It's definitely
That's
very
awesome.
It's a very interesting occasion. And again, your answer led to something else that I've been really curious to talk to you about as well.
Okay.
You've mentioned communication and getting in touch with people such as, Eminem and Nikki Sixx. And, Nikki Sixx is a big figure for me. And it's just amazing to hear that, you've been in touch with him. I remember when I was younger, I came across your IMDb page. And, I remember, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, hopefully I'm not, you appeared in a few movies. And I remember I saw a photo of you with Stephen King, which I thought it's like the coolest thing I've ever seen. Yeah, it's because I was, your band was like the thing that I was playing all the time, and I was just getting into Stephen King, and just both of those words colliding was like the coolest thing ever. Obviously, you've been part of one of the biggest soundtrack songs ever as well, with Spider-Man and all of that, which I'd be curious to hear about that too from your perspective. But my question is, you've been in touch with so many influential and great people. Do you have a favorite interaction, a moment that was really special to you, and a moment where you were starstruck, or which one of those interactions you feel mention worthy the most?
I'm always starstruck. I really love my heroes, and I've been fortunate and blessed enough to be in the same room with a lot of them, and they run the gauntlet, as they say. I got to meet James Brown right before he died. Wow. At the Grammys, I believe. That was a surreal moment. I got to be about 20 feet from Michael Jackson on his birthday, because his birthday is August 29th, and my son Cody's birthday was August 29th. And I took him to the MTV Awards with me, and getting to see, the first thing they did was Britney Spears came out and gave a birthday cake and a little trophy to Michael Jackson for his birthday.
Yeah.
But getting to be in the same room with him was crazy. but I'm just as fascinated by meeting Eminem, and I got to meet Enrique Iglesias and Faith Hill and Tim McGraw and let's see, Lenny Kravitz was a big one. I got to meet Gwen Stefani. That was really cool. And the night I met her, it was the night before September 11th. It was September 10th.
Oh wow!
And the next day, and we were in New York City at a party. And the next day we went to Maine to start the Godsmack tour. And we were on tour with Godsmack. Meeting them, I was just as starstruck to meet Godsmack. I was meeting one of my hometown boys. We're both from Memphis, Justin Timberlake.
Oh wow!
Meeting him, I was kind of starstruck. You know what I mean? Boys to Men, I was totally starstruck.
Yes.
I was like, dude, what's up?
Yeah.
I was like, you got one of the biggest songs in the world. And they were like, I know. It was crazy. But yeah, just I met Hall and Oates. Yeah. I mean, just meeting all my heroes is definitely one of the fringe benefits of getting to go to those award shows and stuff like that. But yeah, I get starstruck too, man. I'm totally starstruck around all of my heroes. But I'm also bold. Like, I won't waste that moment. Yes. I'm gonna go up to them. Because if you don't go up to them and say something, you're gonna regret it for the rest of your life.
Yes.
So I'm not. I'm a pretty shy person, but I just force myself to go up and say something to him. It's like when I met my wife. I was at a show in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and she was like a model, or she was working for a local modeling agency or whatever. And I was starstruck when I met her. But when I first met her, I went back to the bus and I told the guys, I said, if I don't go talk to this girl, I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life. Yeah. And I ended up going back and talking to her, and we've been together for 18 years and have 3 beautiful children. And it's been crazy. But yeah, I get starstruck around everybody. But to answer your question, the moment that I was truly starstruck was meeting Nikki Sixx. I mean, when he was sitting across the table from me, like at a dinner table. And I said, forgive me if I stare at you like a crazy person. I said, please don't think I'm insane. I said, you just been my idol since I was, I don't know, like 10 years old, 11 years old. And I said, I just can't take my eyes off of you. And Nikki Sixx is one of those guys that you talk about charisma. Whoo, like, he is dripping with charisma. Like, he's like Prince, dude. When he walks in a room, it's just like time stops. Whoa. And yeah, he's got crazy, crazy charisma, man. He's got that, like Dave Chappelle said, he's got that orange aura around him.
Yeah. This is how I imagine it, because I've been, so fascinated specifically with Nikki Sixx after reading his books, and they're just so sincere and real and strong, and listening to him just, expressing his philosophical thoughts in his voice is just like unreal. And again, hopefully I'm not wrong.
A song for us called Rest in Pieces. He wrote Rest in Pieces.
Yeah, that was I was going to ask you about, because I think I read somewhere that you've been writing with him on a few occasions. So yeah, I can imagine what's that's been like.
Crazy.
Wow.
Surreal. Just crazy.
Wow. And leading to the next song I've mentioned, I'm also very interested to hear about it as well. Hero, Spider-Man 2, Chad Kroeger. How was that like? I mean, like when you were doing that, did you imagine that it would become such an emblematic thing in culture in general?
Right. I knew that song was special the moment I heard it. And Chad was like, I got this song idea, and he said, it's really not a Nickelback song, and the guys in Nickelback don't like it. And I was like, well, let me hear it. And, he played it for me, and then we kind of figured out the kind of the arrangement and the harmonies and stuff like that. And once we figured that out, I turned and told my A&R guy, Rob Stevenson, I said, Rob, get in here. You got to hear this. So he comes in, and we played it for him, and he was just like blown away. And Sony was actually going with a different song as the lead single. They were going with a Sum 41 song, like a punk rock song that was amazing.
Yeah.
But once we did Hero, Sony like called and stopped literally stopped the presses on pressing the single for Spider-Man, and totally made Hero the lead single. And I was just blown away by that. But I've learned in this business to not think any song is a hit, just to put my heart and soul into every song. And they're like your children, you give it a hug and you give it a kiss, and then you send the song out on its way. You know what I mean? And every song that I thought, oh, that's going to be a smash, wasn't a hit. And every song that I was like, I don't know, it's just been boom, like crazy smash hit, So I did Hero with Chad, and then we were up in Vancouver and had a great time. And then I left and went back on the road with Saliva, and then went out to LA and spent some time out there, took some time off, got, cleaned up, and, didn't quit partying and all that. And got myself straightened out, and then I was flying back home, and my girlfriend at the time was like, this song is blowing up. I was like, what song? And she goes, that Hero song you did with Chad. I was like, what? And next thing you know, I was in New York City, and I was walking through Times Square, and this group of kids was walking by me, and they were like, yo, Spider-Man, Hero. Yeah, that's awesome. And I was like, they're like, that's Josey Scott. And I was like, what is happening right now? Like, what is going on, dude? And the next thing you know, I was at the NBC studio, and Chad was in Vancouver, and I was in New York City, and they had us side by side, like on one of those news interviews. And they were like, well, how does it feel to have the number one song? And I was like, what? Number one? I was like, are you serious? He's like, yeah, this song's number one this week. And I was like, I was just like speechless, like I am now. You know what I mean? And it was just incredible. And that song is so special. And I think it was a song that the world needed to hear, because that was, right after 9/11 had happened. And um, I, I I had heard that they were shooting some scenes in the Spider-Man movie that actually had to do with the Twin Towers. And they had to scrap that and go back and reshoot the ending of Spider-Man because of what happened on 9/11. And I just think that was a really special song that the world needed to hear at that time. And luckily it's had what I call shelf life. It's had staying power, you know what I mean? And it's one of those songs that you can listen to and it doesn't sound like it was 25 years ago, but it was. But it doesn't seem like it was 20 something years ago. Yeah. And even Click Click Boom or Always, I'm so thankful and humbled by that you can listen to those songs and it doesn't sound dated or old or out of sync or out of style or whatever. It still cooks, as they say.
Yeah, a lot. And I was actually just thinking about that because literally to this day, one of my most played streamed albums is Cinco El Diablo. And
wow.
Yeah, I love that album. And I was just listening to it like a few days ago, and I was thinking how even in terms of production, in terms of studio quality and all of that, it's still, I guess it still holds its even an understatement because you can't really say it's done like almost 20 years ago, I guess, again,
right.
or 15 or 16 or whatever the case might be. And
right.
I guess just speaks to, the approach you undertook when it came to this aspect of your career in terms of attention to details and whatnot. Just want to check. Do we have more time, or do you want to wrap it up? I think we're a bit.
I can go for a little bit longer. I'm about to take my kids to the fair. They're all excited about that.
We don't want to be an obstacle to that. Yeah.
No, that's fine. I love your questions.
Thank you. So okay, I'll try to stick to 3 more. Okay.
Okay.
So one of my let's say signature questions when I talk with musicians and people in the music businesses, and I just can't miss the opportunity to give it to you as well. What's the question you've never been asked but you've always wanted to answer?
Wow. Dude, you are killing me with these questions. Oh, man. I've never been asked what it's like to see your child be born. And that is like, I can't describe that feeling. You know what I mean? When my wife had our son Justice in 2005 or 2006, or when my daughter Jordan was born in 2011, or when my daughter Jolie was born in 2014. It like or 2016. I can't describe how amazing, because I'm one of those fathers that I like to get in there and be hands-on And when Justice was born, the doctor said, well, how involved do you want to be, son? And I said, well, I'm in. I want to do whatever. And he goes, well, take all them rings off and wash your hands and get cleaned up. Whoa. And so I go over and take all my skull rings off and everything and surgically scrub my hands. And I put these big gray gloves on up to the elbows. And then I went over, and my wife is pushing, and just to see my child come into the world and deliver him with my own hands and hold him in my arms and cut the cord and, take him over to hand him off to the nurses, and they're, cleaning him up, and to just see him make his first sounds and to hear his voice and to see his little black hair on top of his head. And man, I can't describe that. And my first child, Cody, I had him when I was 18 years old. And it was the same thing, man. Just seeing him come into the world and, getting to hold him for the first time. It's just, I don't think I'm asked enough about what it's like to be a father. And that's probably my answer.
It's really funny because literally I wanted to ask you about that. The next question was that, because
that's awesome.
As I've said in the beginning, it seems that you have such a amazing family and that you're enjoying yourself so much. And I was just really curious to hear about that, because it seems you're so enthusiastic and full of positive emotions when you are just around your family and just being connected with each other. So, and I very much like that, because I think nowadays many people neglect the importance and, just the pure joy in terms of being close to your family and being close to the people, you love. Because I don't know, it just seems that in society nowadays, many people choose to neglect these people and focus on some other aspects of life. And I think it's so beautiful to see that you appreciate that to the fullest, so.
Absolutely. I think, and I agree with you. I think not enough people appreciate that in life. And there is, I believe there's a difference in happiness and joy. Like you said, like when I buy a pair of new Michael Jordans, that's happiness. Or when my favorite team wins, the Super Bowl or something, that's happiness. But when I spend time with my children, that's joy. And that's joy will always outlast happiness.
Yes.
Happiness is like a drug. It's like a shot. It's that feeling when you buy something on Amazon and you're like, oh, that's cool. Or when something arrives on your porch that you ordered and you're tearing the box open, you know what I mean? That's a shot of happiness, and it comes and it goes really quick. But having my wife and my children to love is pure joy, and that will always, always, always outlast happiness. So I'm more addicted to joy than happiness.
This is how it should be done. It's just
right.
The essence of life, I guess.
Essence of life. That's right. Ooh, that's good. I like that.
Thank you. And how do you we've been talking about music and family and all of that. And how do you like to spend your time outside everything. What are other aspects of life that you are passionate about? You've mentioned sports. Do you watch a lot of these? Do you read, or what are other things that you just enjoy doing?
Well, I love listening to books. I've got that new I think it's called Audible or something.
Audible, yeah.
Where you listen to books or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big reader. I have attention deficit disorder, and I just can't pay attention when I try to read a book. But when I listen to it, it like kicks in my imagination, and I can see the colors, and I can see the scene that the person is painting with their words. And I love listening to books, but I'd say my favorite thing to do is spending time with my children. My favorite time of day when I'm home is picking them up from school or taking them to school. And then once I pick them up, we usually go to the store and get like a snack or something, and then I'll take them to the park, or I'll take them to play tennis. Like my daughters love to play tennis. And I love to play golf. I'm not very good at it, but I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated with how you get a little white ball all the way down this 400-yard thing and get it in this little cup.
Yeah.
But yeah, spending time with my children and my wife is my favorite thing ever.
That's just beautiful. It's fantastic to to see people like yourself. I personally, it's very encouraging to me, because as we've mentioned, the topic of society and people nowadays and the lack of morals and ethic values and all of that, it's so refreshing to sometimes just meet like-minded individuals and just prove to yourself that some things are still here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's still good people out there.
Yeah, I think that's very important to mention. And to finish it off, just tell me a bit about what we can expect from your career with your activities. Do you have any plans for to advance in what you are doing, or new music shows? What's the situation with that?
Well, I'm talking to a label right now about releasing a new album. And my plan is to go into the studio and purge all these songs that I've been writing over the past 10 years since I left Saliva. Like I said, the radio in my head has always kept playing. And I have at least 2 albums of songs cataloged in my phone and in my notes and notebooks and stuff. But my plan is to go into the studio, and I've got a single that I'm going to release within the next couple of months called Evel Knievel.
Yes.
That I'm really excited about. And I've finally gotten back to my roots and what excited me about music in the first place, and what excited me about being in the studio in the first place, and what really inspires my creativity is doing that, going in the studio and creating these new songs. But what to expect is I'm just gonna pour my heart and soul out into 10 or 11 or 12 songs and put out a new record. I'm planning on writing a book. I've actually kind of gotten started on writing a book. So I'd like to release an album and a book in the next year or so, an album a lot sooner, but I'm planning on writing and finishing my book. And just continuing to nurture that connection that I have with the fans. I think that gets lost in the mix when industry people start to come in and they suggest, well, maybe you should do this, or maybe you should do that, or we'll bring in this songwriter, or we'll bring in this person to help you write songs or whatever. And I think that can be helpful. I'm not saying that I'm against that, but you have to be careful in this business to not lose the genesis of who you truly are, because that's what people want. My 16-year-old son, Justice, tells me all the time, Dad, all my favorite bands' best album is their first album.
Always. Yes.
So I'm trying to get back to that guy, to that dude. And that's what Evel Knievel is it's a perfect paragraph to what's going on in that guy's life now.
Wow.
At 50, you know, and I'm going to just expand on that. And like I said, I've got two albums worth of material ready to go, and I'm just going to get in the studio and get into that creative process that I love so much. And I'm going to continue to nurture that connection that I have with the fans.
I think there is no better way to finish this conversation off with. I'm personally so excited to hear all of this new stuff that is coming from you. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Thank you, Hristo. Thank you.
And I just want to thank you so much for your time and for your sincerity, and for opening to everything that we've been discussing. It's been truly a very remarkable experience for me. So I'm very thankful, honestly.
I'm very thankful too, Hristo. Thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Send my, send my thanks to your wife as well, Kendra. She was amazing to arrange this conversation with. I would also, I would love you to send you a copy of my book as a gift, because,
wow.
Yeah, it's, it's being very much influenced by you and people like you who influenced my love to music. So I guess, I'll communicate about that later, but hopefully that's fine with you. I just...
absolutely. I would love that. Thank you. Thank you so much, man.
Of course. And we'll talk about that, but go have fun with your family, and I strongly hope we'll be able to talk again soon.
Yeah, let's do this again sometime. And thank you for all your thoughtful questions, and I really had a good time, man.
Thank you. I massively appreciate it.
Thank you, brother.
That. Thank you. You too.
All right. We'll talk soon, brother.
See you soon. See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.